The rain fell in heavy, unrelenting sheets across Interstate 45, just south of Houston, turning the asphalt into a black mirror that swallowed every headlight. It was 1:22 a.m. on a Tuesday in late March, when Dr. Raymond Ellison's deep blue Audi A6 cut through the darkness at a steady 63 miles per hour. The soft pulse of a Coltrane ballad played low through the speakers, but it did nothing to quiet the tension coiled in his chest. At 41, Ellison carried a Ph.D. in aerospace engineering from MIT and served as lead propulsion systems specialist for NASA's Artemis program at the Johnson Space Center. He spent his days calculating thrust-to-weight ratios, cryogenic fluid dynamics, and orbital insertion windows. Tonight, however, his entire universe had shrunk to the military-grade Pelican case buckled securely into the passenger seat beside him. Inside that case rested a one-of-a-kind beryllium core navigation transducer, a $42 million prototype that had taken 3 years and a team of 68 engineers to perfect. Less than 90 minutes earlier, a catastrophic sensor failure during a full system simulation had forced an emergency call from the Houston test facility. If the replacement unit was not seated in the command module's mainframe before the cryogenic seals locked at 4 a.m., the entire launch window would slip by 6 months and cost the government billions. Ellison had driven the component up from a secure auxiliary laboratory in Austin under direct Department of Homeland Security tracking. The case was temperature-controlled, biometrically locked, and marked with bold red and white federal tamper seals. He was 58 miles from the Johnson Space Center gates when the night exploded behind him. Red and blue lights filled the rearview mirror in a violent, strobing wall. The siren's sharp chirp cut through the rain like a blade. Ellison's heart performed the same sickening drop it always did, the ancestral reaction of a black man alone on a dark southern highway in the middle of the night. He checked the speedometer. 63 and a 70. Tags current. Signals working. No legal reason. Still, the cruiser rode his bumper, high beams blinding. He activated the turn signal, eased onto the gravel shoulder, and rolled to a stop. Protocol. Interior lights on. Both hands visible on the wheel at 10 and 2. Engine off. Window down. The damp Texas air smelled of ozone and wet pine. In the side mirror, he watched the driver's door of the State Highway Patrol unit swing open. Officer Travis Harlan stepped out into the rain with the slow, deliberate saunter of a man who believed the asphalt belonged to him. 12 years on the job. A personnel file thick with excessive force complaints and racial profiling grievances that the union had repeatedly buried. Harlan liked the night shift. He liked the power that came with darkness and the absence of witnesses. He stopped just behind the driver's door, staying out of Ellison's direct line of sight, and slammed the beam of a heavy maglite into the cabin. The light swept across Ellison's face, his crisp white shirt and loosened dark tie, the pristine interior, and finally settled on the locked Pelican case. License, registration, and proof of insurance. The voice was harsh, dripping with unearned authority. Ellison kept his hands still. "Good evening, officer. My wallet is in my back right pocket. Registration is in the glove box. I need to reach for them. Is that all right?" Harlan scoffed. "Just get the papers, boy, and no sudden moves." The word hung in the wet air like a deliberate strike. Ellison's jaw tightened, but his face remained a professional mask. He moved slowly, handed over the documents, and waited. Harlan read the name with exaggerated slowness. Raymond Ellison. Mighty nice car for a guy out driving at 1 a.m, Ray. This yours? Yes, officer. Registered in my name, as the paperwork shows. Where you headed in such a hurry on a night like this? Johnson Space Center. I'm an aerospace engineer with NASA. This is urgent federal business. Harlan's laugh was sharp and mocking. Rain dripped from the brim of his campaign hat. NASA, an engineer. You expect me to believe that? You look more like somebody running product up from the border. Let me see some real ID, not this driver's license. Ellison carefully retrieved the heavy holographic NASA Level 6 security badge from the jacket on the passenger seat and passed it over. Harlan shone the light on it, rubbed his thumb across the seal, then flicked it back through the window. It bounced off Ellison's chest and landed in the footwell. Anybody can buy a piece of plastic on the internet, Ray. You think I haven't seen every trick in the book? Ellison's voice dropped an octave, steady and controlled. I am currently transporting a critical, highly classified federal component on a strict timetable. If you would like to call dispatch and verify my credentials through the federal database, I strongly suggest you do so, but I need to get back on the road. The calm defiance infuriated Harlan. Men like him did not know how to process a black man who refused to be either terrified or aggressive. The flashlight snapped back to the Pelican case and its bright federal warning stickers. What's in the box? Classified federal property. I am not authorized to discuss its contents or open it outside a Class 100 clean room environment. Harlan's hand settled on the butt of his sidearm. You know what I think? I think you're a smart-ass drug runner with a fake badge and a trunk full of fentanyl. I think that fancy box is full of cartel cash. Step out of the vehicle. Ellison did not move at once. Officer Harlan, I am formally advising you that detaining me will severely disrupt a federal spaceflight operation. If you open that case, you will destroy a $42 million component and commit a federal crime. Step out of the damn car, now! The retention strap on the holster clicked open. The threat of lethal force was sudden and absolute. On a dark, isolated stretch of highway, no MIT degree and no federal clearance could stop a bullet. Ellison moved slowly, telegraphing every motion. He unbuckled, opened the door, and stepped into the freezing rain. Before he found solid footing, Harlan grabbed him by the shoulder, spun him, and slammed his chest and face against the wet roof of the Audi. Spread your legs! A rough, aggressive search. No weapons. Then the steel cuffs bit into Ellison's wrists, ratcheted far too tight. You're under arrest for suspicion of trafficking. Now let's see what you're really hiding. Harlan dragged him through mud and gravel and shoved him into the rear of the cruiser. The back seat smelled of old sweat, vomit, and cheap pine air freshener. No interior handles. Through the rain-streaked glass, Ellison watched Harlan haul the heavy case out of the Audi and set it on the hood of the patrol unit under the glare of the headlights. There was no keyhole, only a biometric scanner and a 12-digit alphanumeric pad. The case chirped, unauthorized user, access denied. Harlan pounded the reinforced shell, then retrieved a steel crowbar from his trunk. Ellison's blood ran cold. The transducer floated in a vacuum-sealed bath of liquid helium. If the outer shell breached, humid Texas air would instantly corrupt the microcircuitry. 3 years of work, billions of dollars, the safety of 4 astronauts, all about to be destroyed by a racist officer with a pry bar. Ellison kicked the heavy plastic partition. Bang, bang, bang. Harlan yanked the rear door open, crowbar still in hand. You got a death wish, boy? If you strike that case, it will trigger an explosive decompression of liquid helium, Ellison said, voice commanding, buying time. It will blow your hands off and send an immediate distress beacon to the Department of Homeland Security. You are tampering with Level 8 restricted technology. Doubt flickered across Harlan's face, but pride would not let him stand down. You're full of it. Let me make one phone call. Put it on speaker. If I'm who you think I am, nobody answers. If I'm telling the truth, you need to hear it from my director. Harlan hesitated, then retrieved the phone from Ellison's jacket. Face ID unlocked it. He found the contact labeled Director Cross and dialed on speaker, smirk already forming. It rang twice. Ellison, where the hell are you? The voice was crisp, hyper-alert, backed by the hum of dozens of consoles and ringing alarms. Dr. Vivian Cross, Deputy Director of Flight Operations, stood in the center of Mission Control, staring at a giant countdown clock. Telemetry shows you stopped moving on I-45 12 minutes ago. We are 21 minutes from thermal lock. Do you have the payload? Harlan's smirk vanished. Director Cross, Ellison projected clearly. This is Dr. Ellison. I am currently detained on the shoulder of Interstate 45 South, near mile marker 108. I have been placed in handcuffs by a Texas Department of Public Safety officer. He has seized the payload and is attempting to force the biometric containment case open with a steel crowbar. 3 seconds of dead silence. Then the ambient noise of Mission Control vanished, replaced by an eerie quiet. Cross's voice was pure ice. Officer, I do not know your name, and frankly, I do not care. My name is Dr. Vivian Cross. I am the acting director of operations for the Artemis lunar program. You are currently in possession of a Department of Defense classified orbital transducer. If you so much as scratch the paint on that case, you will be prosecuted under the Espionage Act and relevant provisions of the USA Patriot Act for attempted sabotage of critical national infrastructure. Who is your commanding officer? Harlan's ego, calcified by years of unchecked power, fought back. Listen here, lady. I don't know what kind of scam you two are running, but this man is under arrest for suspicion of narcotics trafficking, and I'm confiscating this box as evidence. You can tell your story to the judge. Listen to me very carefully, you incompetent fool. Cross's voice cracked like a whip. I am looking at the biometric telemetry of that case right now. If that seal is broken, humanity does not return to the moon next launch window. You have 30 seconds to release Dr. Ellison, place that case gently back into his vehicle, and provide him an armed escort to the Johnson Space Center. If you refuse, I will treat your actions as a hostile domestic threat against a federal asset. You're threatening a police officer? I'm the law out here. Not tonight, you're not. Code red line, Ellison. We are taking the highway. The line went dead. Harlan stared at the phone, then at Ellison sitting calmly in the back seat. What the hell was that? Code red line? What's she gonna do? Send the space shuttle after me? Ellison's eyes held a mixture of pity and cold satisfaction. You should have read the warning labels. It's not just NASA property. It's a joint Department of Defense operation. You didn't pull over an engineer. You hijacked a piece of national security infrastructure. Harlan threw the phone onto the front seat, grabbed the crowbar again, and raised it over the case. The rain was drowned out by a low-frequency mechanical roar that rattled the teeth in his skull. He froze, crowbar suspended, and turned toward the pitch-black southern horizon. Coming the wrong way up the interstate at high speed was a phalanx of matte black armored SUVs. 8 of them, LED light bars cutting through the rain like lasers. Above them, the deafening thump of twin rotors. 2 UH-60 Black Hawks skimmed 50 feet above the asphalt, searchlights sweeping the highway. The rotor wash blasted rain sideways in horizontal sheets. The Suburbans screeched into a perfect tactical perimeter, boxing in Harlan's cruiser and Ellison's Audi. Doors flew open before the vehicles fully stopped. More than 24 tactical agents in dark windbreakers marked FBI and DHS poured out, assault rifles at low ready. Within 5 seconds, Harlan was surrounded by a wall of federal firepower. "Drop the crowbar and step away from the vehicle," the amplified voice boomed. Harlan's uniform was soaked through. His heart hammered against his ribs. He let the crowbar clatter onto the wet pavement and raised his hands. A tall, broad-shouldered man in a drenched FBI windbreaker stepped through the perimeter. Special Agent in Charge, Nathan Cole of the Houston Field Office Counterintelligence Division. 2 NASA security operatives rushed past him to the case. "Agent Cole, biometric seal intact, no thermal breach, payload secure." Cole's eyes were cold and calculating. "Where is Dr. Ellison?" "He's in the back of my cruiser," Harlan stammered. "I was just conducting a routine traffic stop. The guy was acting suspicious." "Unlock the car, now." Harlan's fingers trembled as he opened the rear door. Ellison sat in the cramped, foul-smelling seat, wrists raw and red, expensive suit ruined by mud, posture unbroken. Cole leaned in. "Dr. Ellison, Special Agent Cole, FBI. Director Cross sent us. Are you injured?" "Bruised but functional. Is the transducer safe?" "It's secure. Take those cuffs off him," Cole ordered Harlan. "If you hesitate, my agents will cut them off, and I will arrest you for the unlawful detention of a federal official." The steel fell away. Ellison stepped out, rubbing his wrists. From one of the Suburbans emerged Captain Derek Sullivan of the Texas Department of Public Safety, Harlan's commanding officer, hauled from bed by federal agents. He looked at Harlan with pure disgust, then turned a respectful gaze to Ellison. "Dr. Ellison, on behalf of the state of Texas, I am profoundly sorry for this unprovoked outrage. We will handle this." "See that you do, Captain." Ellison walked past Harlan as if the man no longer existed. One of the agents returned the Pelican case. Ellison pressed his thumb to the scanner. The LED flashed green. Cole gestured toward the lead Suburban. "We have 19 minutes to get you to mission control. We're shutting down the southbound lanes of I-45 for the convoy. Helicopters will run point." As the armored vehicle pulled away, Ellison looked back once. Harlan stood in the rain, stripped of power and dignity, while Captain Sullivan screamed in his face, veins standing out in his neck even in the dark. By 3:47 a.m., Raymond Ellison stood inside the sterile Class 100 clean room at the Johnson Space Center, stripped of his ruined suit and clad in a white anti-static garment. At exactly 3:55 a.m., 5 minutes before the thermal seals were scheduled to lock permanently, he seated the beryllium core transducer into the command module's mainframe with surgical precision. In the observation gallery above, Dr. Vivian Cross watched the telemetry boards flash green. A collective sigh of relief rolled through mission control. The Artemis mission was saved. While Ellison cemented his place in the stars, the destruction of Travis Harlan's world had only begun. For the first 48 hours, Harlan tried to hide behind the shield that had always protected him, the police union. In a drab conference room in Austin, he sat with Representative Harold Finch, drinking stale coffee and spinning the narrative. "It was a dark road, Harold. He matched a profile. He was evasive. I had probable cause. It's a misunderstanding. Suspension with pay, maybe a sensitivity class, and we bury it." Finch stared at his phone, face pale. "Travis, this isn't a civil rights suit filed by a public defender. You didn't just rough up a civilian. Do you understand what you actually did?" The door opened without a knock. Federal agents from the Department of Justice Civil Rights Division and the DHS Office of Inspector General walked in, carrying bankers' boxes and warrants. A sharply dressed DOJ attorney dropped a thick stack of papers on the table. Officer Harlan, you are under federal indictment. Indictment for what? A bad traffic stop? For starters, deprivation of rights under color of law. Title 18, United States Code, Section 242. That's the appetizer, because you attempted to forcibly open a highly classified Department of Defense payload containing restricted aerospace technology. You are also charged under the Espionage Act for the unauthorized attempted acquisition of defense materials and under statutes protecting critical national infrastructure for attempted sabotage of a federal space asset. Harlan's legs gave out. He collapsed into the chair. You were a police officer, the attorney corrected. As of this morning, Captain Sullivan has terminated your employment. Standard union protections do not apply when national security is involved. Your body camera footage was seized by federal warrant at 4:18 a.m. The federal government does not play by local precinct rules. There is no blue wall thick enough to withstand the combined weight of the Department of Homeland Security and NASA. The DOJ opened Harlan's entire 12-year career to audit. The local district attorney's office, desperate to avoid the appearance of complicity, opened its own files. Within a week, the Houston Chronicle obtained the dashcam audio through a FOIA request filed by federal prosecutors. The recording of Harlan calling one of the nation's top aerospace engineers "boy," followed by his threats to smash a $42 million piece of space hardware with a crowbar, played on national television and went viral worldwide. Travis Harlan became the undisputed face of arrogant, racist incompetence. His wife, unable to endure the media siege and the sudden freezing of their assets, while federal prosecutors examined every past seizure he had made, took their children and moved to her mother's house in Ohio. Former colleagues treated him like a contagion. Every minority driver Harlan had ever stopped, ticketed, or arrested over the previous decade suddenly had grounds for appeal. The county was forced to allocate millions to review his cases. Dozens of convictions were vacated. He had become a financial and political liability to the state of Texas. 11 months later, the Bob Casey United States Courthouse in downtown Houston became the stage for one of the most closely watched civil rights and national security trials of the decade. The air conditioning fought a losing battle against the tension inside courtroom 9B. Travis Harlan sat at the defense table in a slightly oversized gray suit, looking like a ghost of the man who had once owned a stretch of Interstate 45. His high-priced attorney, Victor Lang, funded by a quiet legal defense fund raised by fringe groups, tried for 2 days to reframe the night as a good-faith traffic stop gone wrong. Officer Harlan is a patrolman, not a rocket scientist, Lang boomed in opening. When he saw a vehicle traveling 63 in a blinding rainstorm, too fast for conditions, he executed a lawful stop. When the driver refused to open a heavily fortified container of the exact make and model known to the DEA as preferred by the Sinaloa cartel for high-purity fentanyl, his training kicked in. He is guilty of being overzealous, perhaps. Espionage, sabotage, that is a theatrical overreach by the federal government. Some jurors nodded. The narrative was shifting. On the third day, Assistant United States Attorney Sarah Brennan called Dr. Raymond Ellison to the stand. He walked into the courtroom with the same quiet dignity he had shown on the highway, took the oath, and adjusted the microphone. Brennan walked him through the events, allowing him to explain the cryogenic properties of the transducer with such precise clarity that Lang's cartel lockbox theory began to sound absurd. On cross-examination, Lang approached with a predatory smile. Dr. Ellison, you hold a PhD from MIT. You're a highly intelligent man accustomed to giving orders. When a simple state trooper asked you to step out of your vehicle, you felt insulted, didn't you? You felt you were above the law. I felt the law was being weaponized against me without cause. You refused a direct order to open the container. You created a standoff. You used the words federal crime and sabotage to intimidate an officer just trying to do his job. If you had simply cooperated, none of this would have happened. Ellison's voice dropped to a register that forced the entire room to lean in. If I had opened that case, the thermal matrix would have shattered. The Artemis mission would have been grounded. 4 astronauts would have been delayed from returning humanity to the moon. American taxpayers would have lost $42 million in a fraction of a second. I did not escalate the situation, Mr. Lang. I prevented a catastrophic failure. I was doing my job. Brennan rose for redirect. Dr. Ellison, you also hold patents in advanced telemetry and security systems, correct? Yes. I designed the internal security and data logging arrays for NASA ground transport vehicles. And is it true you retrofitted your personal vehicle with a similar prototype system? Lang objected. Overruled. Yes. My Audi is equipped with a continuous 360-degree audio and visual telemetry system that locks its data to a secure cloud server the moment emergency proximity sensors are triggered. The color drained from Harlan's face. Brennan tapped a tablet. Your Honor, the government offers Prosecution Exhibit 42, the decrypted telemetry and audio files from Dr. Ellison's vehicle, cross-referenced with recovered deleted files from Officer Harlan's cruiser that the FBI Cyber Division salvaged from the precinct servers. She pressed play. The large screens showed the dark, rainy highway from the rear-facing camera of the Audi. The audio was crystal clear. 2 full minutes before the lights ever activated, Harlan's voice came through the speakers, talking on a cell phone to another officer. Yeah, I'm stuck out here on 45. Dead night. Wait, hold on. Got a fancy little Audi rolling by. Dark windows. The sound of typing as he ran the plates. Registered out of Austin. No warrants. Clean record. Name's Raymond Ellison. Let's pull the license photo. A pause. Then a harsh, ugly laugh. Well, look at this. A black guy in an $80,000 car at 1 in the morning. He's probably a runner for the Houston syndicates. I don't care how clean his record is. I'm gonna light his world up. I'm gonna tear that car down to the axles just to watch him sweat. The audio clicked off. Absolute silence filled the courtroom. The defense's entire narrative, reasonable suspicion, heat of the moment, cartel bulletins, incinerated in seconds. It had been premeditated, malicious, and rooted entirely in racial prejudice. Harlan buried his face in his hands. Victor Lang slowly closed his legal pad. There was no loophole large enough to crawl through a recorded confession of civil rights violations. The jury deliberated less than 2 hours. Guilty of deprivation of rights under color of law. Guilty of attempted destruction of government property. Guilty of interference with federal operations. 6 weeks later, Judge Eleanor Whitmore presided over sentencing. Before the sentence was pronounced, Raymond Ellison was granted the opportunity to deliver a victim impact statement. He stood at the podium and looked directly at Harlan, now in a bright orange jail jumpsuit, wrists shackled to a waist chain. I am a man of science, Ellison began, voice steady. I deal in variables, in constants, and in the laws of physics. Gravity does not care about the color of the object it pulls. Thrust does not discriminate. The vacuum of space is indifferent to prejudice. In my world, we are bound by facts and by the unified goal of pushing humanity forward. But on that highway, Officer Harlan dragged me out of the future and into a past this country is still bleeding from. He looked at a man carrying the pinnacle of human achievement and saw only a stereotype. He was willing to destroy years of research, endanger the lives of astronauts, and ruin my life simply to satisfy his own arrogant bigotry. I do not hate Mr. Harlan. Hatred is a highly inefficient emotion, but I pity him. While the rest of us are looking up at the stars, trying to figure out how to get there, men like him are desperately clawing at the dirt, trying to pull everyone else down into the mud with them. I ask the court to ensure he can never pull another citizen down again. Judge Whitmore adjusted her glasses and looked down at Harlan with professional detachment and profound disappointment. Travis Harlan, you were entrusted with a badge and a gun to protect the citizens of this state. Instead, you used your authority as a weapon of intimidation and prejudice. You allowed personal bias to override your training, your common sense, and the law. Your actions were not a lapse in judgment. They were a calculated abuse of power that threatened a vital national security asset. You are a disgrace to the uniform you wore. On the federal charges of civil rights violations and attempted destruction of federal property, I sentence you to 168 months, 14 years in federal prison. You are remanded immediately to the custody of the United States Marshals. Harlan did not cry out. The fight had been drained from him. The heavy clink of chains echoed through the silent courtroom as the marshals led him away. 2 years later, on a clear September morning, the Florida sun beat down on the VIP observation deck at the Kennedy Space Center. The air was thick with humidity and electric anticipation. Dr. Raymond Ellison stood at the railing wearing a headset, eyes fixed on the massive Space Launch System rocket 3 miles away on Launch Complex 39B. Inside the Orion capsule, 4 astronauts waited to break the bonds of Earth. Deep in the guidance matrix, sealed in its liquid helium vacuum, the beryllium core navigation transducer hummed perfectly, calculating orbital trajectories at billions of operations per second. T-minus 30 seconds, hundreds of miles away, in the Federal Correctional Institution at Beaumont, Texas, the atmosphere was starkly different. Travis Harlan sat on a hard plastic chair in the noisy day room of his cell block, faded khaki uniform marked with an inmate number. The air smelled of industrial bleach and unwashed bodies. A small television enclosed in a steel cage was tuned to a news network. The image shifted to a live feed of the Artemis rocket. The countdown ticker at the bottom of the screen read, T-minus 10 seconds. A younger inmate next to him leaned forward. "Hey, old man, ain't that the space thing you got busted over?" Harlan did not answer. His throat was tight with the ashes of a ruined life. He watched the screen as the massive engines ignited. A brilliant plume of fire erupted from the base of the rocket, followed seconds later by the deep, chest-rattling roar that vibrated through the speakers. "Liftoff," the announcer declared. "Liftoff of Artemis, returning humanity to the moon." Harlan watched the rocket rise, tearing through the blue sky, leaving a pristine white trail in its wake. It was a monument to human intelligence, perseverance, and unity. It was moving toward the future. The heavy steel doors of the cell block clanged shut behind him for afternoon count. The sound was brutal, final, and inescapable. He lowered his head and stared at his empty hands, hands that had once held power and now held nothing but 14 years of regret. While the man he had handcuffed navigated the stars, Travis Harlan had locked himself inside a cage of his own making, left behind in the dark forever. True justice does not always arrive immediately, but when it comes collecting, it strikes with the unstoppable force of a rocket leaving the atmosphere.